What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Thursday Night Live. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Here in the United States, it is September 11th. A day that's blazoned into the minds of many people, especially of my generation, because of the events surrounding that day. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world today. You know, the thing about September 11th is that happened the year that I graduated from high school, and I was in college. I was actually on my way to a math class, and I remember coming over the news, and I didn't really know what to make of it. On the radio, they were talking. They broke through and were talking about the planes hitting the World Trade Center, and well, the rest was history, I guess. After that, I ended up joining the Marine Corps, spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I guess you could say that event impacted my life significantly, and um, it's a sad situation what happened. It's a sad situation what happened yesterday, and there are lots of crazy situations that keep happening over and over again. My thoughts and prayers go out to the people who have been impacted. I hate to see the rhetoric and the violence and everything that's going on. Um, Wherever you land on that, um, you know, I don't like seeing people hurt. So one of the ways I deal with it is with stuff like this. Art. It's more of an escape for me, I guess. So today we're going to continue our little project. And I was trying to think of some ways to navigate this situation. And I'm going to do kind of a little bit of a recap of how we got to where we're at. Where we're at right now is we're in the middle of what we would call the Valley of the Suck, right? Where we're headed in a direction, but we're not there yet, and so in order to get there, we just got to keep pressing through, right? Like pretty much anything else in life, right? So I mentioned briefly at the end of the last session that sometimes I will go through and download like a base mesh or something like that, and sometimes they're helpful, some other times they're not. And this is an example. I just went out and I bought this thing for $3.50, right? Well, it has some information on here that's kind of useful. I'm not so concerned about the topology. It's not a big deal for what we're doing here. It's not exactly the form and shape that I would really want it to be. It's not exactly symmetrical. His head's kind of turned. And I would hope that if I spent money on something, that it would be ready and available to use, especially whenever it's called a base mesh, right? So I downloaded another one. We'll see if this one is any better. I'm going to pull it up here in a moment. Let's go grab our... Let's pull this over to the side here. Import this guy. Hopefully this one does better. That's better. A little bit. Still not exactly what I want. That's okay. So this isn't... This is useful if it's a style that you're going for. What I would probably, if I was going to use something like this, I would probably grab some of these parts and use them on my mesh. But to be perfectly honest, I'm maybe better off just making them by hand. So we're going to talk about how to get our shapes and forms. What I used up to this point is I used these brushes from Shane Olson. From what I understand, he's got a whole new channel or a whole new series that he's going to be starting, or a website. So I would highly recommend checking him out because he's got a ton of knowledge, a ton of resources. Used to work for Disney Infinity back whenever they were doing, or he worked for Avalanche Studios, which was doing Disney Infinity. He and other people like Matt Thorup did a ton of awesome stylized work for that game series. I never actually ever played the game. I did buy some of the little figurines. I still have them to this day because I really enjoyed the style. So, all that said, let's talk about how we can get some sort of base mesh, right? This is an example here. This is actually a good example of a base mesh. So if you're looking for one, this is actually available on ArtStation. And it's a stylized base mesh. You can easily take this and squish it around and make something, if you need a humanoid character or a anthropomorphic character, you can easily get this information from that. So if I were going to take this and use it as a way to get this fox per se, right? I would probably have to adjust the proportions and things here. So let's kind of experiment with that. Okay. So the good thing is that it's broken up into polygroups, so we can use this to our advantage. So we can say we can mask all of this off, and then use our transpose to really edit these things around. And it's 3D geometry, isn't it? You're not going to break anything. This does look interesting though. In fact, I'm gonna mess around with this until I'm either bored of it or Sometimes all you can do is just try things out and see how well they work. That wasn't something that I really enjoyed. So let's try. Let's try scaling this down a little bit. See how that works out. And this one was cool because it came with a male and female model that I can work from. But what's great about it is I can really go to town with this stuff. So let's see. Now, one good thing about having a base mesh that's kind of figured out is I can kind of use it as a little bit of a reference, but it's not exhaustive. All right. Now, sometimes you want to break things off. So if I take this guy and I split him out, then I can So this is one way that we can do it. Okay. Now this one's kind of looking like a satyr or some sort of thing like that, right? So that's one way you can do it. Now, what if you don't have a base mesh to work from? How would we go about navigating that situation? So let's go back over to here, and let's talk about Z spheres. So I'm going to append a little Z sphere right here. And we're going to use this bad boy to generate a mesh from. Now, right now, we're going to primarily just focus on the body. The first place I'm going to go is I'm going to locate where I want basically the pelvis to wind up being, right? Now, this isn't for any particular reason other than that's what I would prefer to do. Okay, now I'm going to turn on transparency. And something to keep in mind if you end up doing this technique, when you have draw activated, if you ever, when we're moving around in ZBrush, we hold shift to snap to a view. If you do that while you have draw activated, it's going to get a little funny. So if I draw here and then hold shift like that to try and snap, it's not going to work properly. So if you're going to do snapping movements, make sure you're in some sort of transpose mode, right? All right, so I'm going to turn on symmetry, and we're going to add some nodes. If you scale down a little bit, it'll really help you to keep control. Now the temptation would be to grab this and just yank it straight down, but what we want to do here is just use this as a point to build from. Now if I hold shift while I'm dragging this out, it's going to enter the next Z sphere at the same size as the last one that was created, right? And what I can do is just switch back and forth between draw and move to establish my joints effectively. So what I'd like to do is I like to go straight down to wherever the foot's going to be, right? And then build backwards. So if I click here, it'll add me a new Z-sphere. I can quickly go back here and move this. So I'm going to add another one. Now, let's say you're like, I really don't like that Z-sphere. You want to remove it? Well, all I got to do is hold Alt and click on that Z-sphere and it'll delete it. Now, your scaling functions will change the size. You can either click on the Z-sphere itself, or you can click on the bone, right? Likewise, you can also rotate. You can click and drag. Whatever you want. So let me build this out real quick, and then we'll get to the next little portion of this. Now, if you want to meet up in the middle, you want to draw another Z-sphere on the center point. You wait until you see that green circle, and then click and you drag out. If you miss it, it's going to draw 2 Z-spheres. Now again, I'm holding shift, and it's going to make it as large as that last Z-sphere right there. Okay, now I'm going to pull this up. I'm actually going to draw another one, or actually, let's go up and then let's add one. Same thing with the legs. We're going to add a sphere, then clicking add again, and then we're going to move this. Now you want to pay attention to the size of your brush, because if it's too large, you'll grab more than one sphere, and well, that just gets annoying. Just like that, see? Right. Now, what we're ultimately trying to get out of this is some sort of mesh that we can work from, right? This allows us to move things around, establish some character if we want to. We can also sort out our proportions. Now let's say you get to go in here and then, well, that looks kind of goofy. If you ever run into a situation, let's see if I can duplicate it. So if you're, it's easier to start doing stuff like that. It means that you've got to adjust the size. It's just making a collision that's just not going to be suitable. And there are ways to deal with that. Now you can move it from the sphere or the bones, remember. Okay. So let's say, well, we have this. I want to make sure that he has some toes. Now that might look terrible right now, but what we need to do is, one, check our size. And all we gotta do is just edit these until we get something that's resembles what we're trying to achieve. Right. And this isn't, this is just a stepstone, right? Whoops. So remember what I said about holding shift? You do not forget. Alright, so we got some little toes. Let's try to pose these a little bit. Not really too concerned about the size. We're going to use some hard surface stuff anyway for this character. But from here, let's say, okay, I'm like, okay, I like the proportions. Maybe I want to change some things. Maybe I want to bring the arms down a little bit. All these other things are manageable, right? Or let's say we want to bring this out just a little bit more. What we'll do from here is now I need to have something that I can actually sculpt on, right? So we're going to go down to these two things right here. We're going to be dealing with unified skin. Or actually, we're going to just deal with making an adaptive skin. Okay. Now, if we just tell it to preview right now, it's going to give us this jumbled mess. That's not what we want. It's got a dynamesh resolution of 256 at a density of 2. That's no go. So what I like to do is bring this all the way down to 1 and bring this down to 0. Now, we can play with this. So if I bring out this density to say 2, or maybe even 3, no. So what if we went with 8? Nope. Now let's turn on classic skinning. Now these being so close to one another, the hotkey for this is A on the keyboard. These being so close might be causing some problems here. So if it is, if you spread them out, that might help the situation. Let's see. Ugh, looks terrible. Let's see, what can we do to help ourselves here? Now, if you run into situations where there's like geometry that's like colliding with itself, sometimes you might need to scale things down. So we're gonna try that, see how that affects this, and it's gonna look like hell. What might help us here is if we add a Z-sphere here for the neck. Okay. Well, okay. So that helps somewhat. Still, we've got this spectacular geometry. Turn off classic skinning. Apparently also had dynamic subdivisions on. So that's something else to keep in mind. Okay. So I messed around with this enough. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, in order to get your mesh from this point, all you need to do is go make adaptive skin. And it's already available. I'm going to go subtool, append this skin Z-sphere, and then this is our actual geometry that we can work from. Okay. So it comes with subdivision levels based upon how many that we put in. And from here, you're able to go through and start editing this. Now, again, it's a bunch of push and pull, just like everything else, right? So if you needed something that is customized, or if you want that level of control, there's one way to do it. Okay. So, something to consider. This looks like hell. Probably not going to work with that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And then we're going to continue working on our little guy here. In this case, just working with this geometry, these little shapes, has been. It just allows me to get down the road faster. Because I can just affect little changes like that. Be done. Now, let's turn off transparency. And let's try get somewhere with this. I'm going to go ahead and actually do a Z-remesh. I'm going to go for half of this. Okay. I just find that it's so much easier to work from much lower resolution. It just always ends up working out much better. Because whenever you have super high resolution, it's like working with super wet clay, and it can get out of control super quickly. Okay. I know I want to split this off. We want to develop out these deltoids here. Now, a lot of this is probably not even going to be seen, but if I'm building the character, I'm going to go ahead and give myself some material to work with. Now, I'll spend a lot of time doing this stuff here, pulling these shapes around. I'd rather spend time doing this and kind of dialing in the anatomy versus trying to sculpt it all. It's an anthropomorphic fox, so you're not going to get, I ain't never seen no fox man walking around, but you could draw from, excuse me, you can draw from some and anatomy resources, right? So at this stage, I just want to get the general shapes. I'm not trying to plug in exact detail, just enough to really kind of establish some of these shapes. know that there's a shoulder blade. This is going to kind of serve as both in one. Might come back and change that at some point, but this is where we are. Okay. I'll split these off too. The reason I'm splitting it out is just easier than having to be concerned about like a move topological. This here, go on. I'm gonna go ahead and just use my knife curve here. Oh. Alright. Now these shades will change, but I just need some basic information in here first. Do a quick mirror and weld. Alright. Not crazy about the shape of his face, so I'm going to play around with that a little bit, see if I can come away with something that's a little more appealing to me. This is where the move brush really comes in handy, and I don't want him to be all wall-eyed. That's for sure. Now, with geometry at this stage, it's kind of hard to tell what it'll actually wind up being, but it kind of looks like a little duck face too. Okay. I'm going to use an H polish to kind of stamp these down a little bit. Okay. Okay. Here I'm just trying to establish some basic anatomy, or at least anatomical features. They're not crucial, but they do help. Probably go a little less aggressive on the Z intensity. Just make sure that we really establish that iliac crest. Okay. Now, I'm gonna have to figure out what to do about this area right here. I really don't like it. But while we're thinking about that, let's work on some other spaces. It'll come to me. That's the thing, when you're working on this stuff, you get stumped somewhere, just move to another spot. And a lot of times, the solution will present itself. I'm just going to see how this looks. It might look terrible. It's not bad. All right. That's not it. This is one of those things you just gotta like mess around with it until it comes to you. So since I'm not sure about that at the moment, let's go ahead and get this here dealt with. So we're gonna break this off. All I'm using is a smooth brush. Now at this stage, I'm not really concerned about like file naming so much. Like I've got all these parts over here, and I know that I know that I need to keep it organized to some degree. Right now, I'm just kind of plugging in shapes, and I'll worry about that once I get something a little more concrete. It's really important to make sure that you do get that organized. So, especially with my day job, you got textures that are associated with things. You need to be able to have a standard way of organizing those things, because if I'm throwing a bunch of products onto a visualization for render, I need to be able to make sure that everything jives, and that whenever something is pulling a texture, especially if we do some sort of automation, if it's not correctly named, if it's not where it's supposed to be, it creates a big problem, and my engineers get really cranky. So might have smoothed that out too much. Okay. Let me pull up my reference here. See, what is it that is giving me a challenge here? So there's one problem. Bring the intensity down. So that helps a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and punch this back a bit. I'm going to look a little goofy here for a moment. And we're going to build it back up. Using one of these. I'm going to delete higher. The reason I want to use this is I want to establish that real prominent cheekbone. It's not there yet, but now we could have used like a curve brush to get these shapes too, but we didn't. Now it's easier to use, like the reason I want to make these shapes is that it's easier to manipulate these from this standpoint than it is to go through and do a bunch of detailed smoothing and stuff. Well, I say easier. Sometimes it's easier just to draw a shape in there, sculpt it into the clay, but I want to have something that I can use basically just the mood brush on. I'm gonna pull up some fox anatomy. It's always good to go check these things. Sometimes I like to look at how people have drawn in their studies, because sometimes artists have a way of simplifying things into basic shapes. Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay. I think I have a direction. Here we go. So I'm going to split those off. I find that that's easier to do than sit around trying to mask things left and right. Actually, wasn't too bad. Sometimes you'll be working and you do something, and you're like, man, why did I do that? And then for whatever reason, it's not that big of a deal. Happy accidents. As Bob Rice used to say. So from here, we're going to have to start sorting out what do we want to do with these appendages here. I know that I want to probably somewhere around here is where they're going to end, and then we'll start working on some sort of robotic sort of feature. But before I can get there, I need to kind of blend these in and then merge them and come up with some kind of reasonable anatomy. Now, the goal is that at some point I want to be able to pose this thing so I'll go ahead and say probably right about there. This is the only piece of geometry right now. I'm going to go ahead and just delete hidden. Or no, let's just split it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I think I'm just going to combine all of these, this forearm, upper arm, deltoid, torso, and leg. I'll probably leave the neck out for now. Now, here's where I wish I would have organized it a little bit better. Look at all these subtools. Okay. So, here's how I like to try, and if I get to a spot where all of this stuff is just like, I don't know what to do with it, here's how I manage it. I'll go to merge visible, okay, and I'll hop over into another tool, and I'll simply append that character, delete that other piece of geometry. And what this does is it simplifies things, so now I can break these pieces down into something that's a little more manageable. So I'll separate out his head and neck. So I'll split this out. So I'll split hidden. I'm also going to split these out. I don't know that I need these here. Maybe. So this kind of helps me stay organized. Rename. The hands I might just build with Z-spheres. Might be a little bit easier to do it that way. Okay. So from this point, what I'm going to do is just duplicate. Duplicate so we can work in a non-destructive manner. And let me go ahead and turn off the original. What we're going to do is we're just going to do a Dynamesh. See what we wind up with. It's not terrible. It's maintained most of my forms. Go ahead, mirror well, just make sure didn't lose anything. So from here, I'll go ahead and kind of sculpt out some of the details that I wasn't going to be able to get with such a low poly. But I don't want to go too crazy with it because we're going to reestablish our geometry here momentarily. All I want to do here is just kind of establish some forms. Got the pecs. This is stylized, so I'm not going to go too crazy here. Got our scapulas. Trapezius. Just having a look at my reference again. Let's grab our snake hook brush. Gonna start pulling some of this geometry around. So what I'm trying to draw in here is basically some mental notes. This is like some fur, right? Doesn't look like it yet. This is where that's going to be. Okay. And then basically from here down is going to be that robotic leg. Okay. Now, probably going to hold off getting into too much depth with the hard surface stuff, but basically I looked at grabbing some greebles that I had from some time ago, but I didn't really see anything that was really going to fit here. So we can kind of create kind of a mock-up. So I'm going to append a sphere really quickly. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to go initialize. We're going to do a cylinder. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to kind of mock this up a bit. Now I know that I'm not going to have that anymore. Duplicate that. We're gonna have to work on the design a bit. I think that there should be some kind of piece that it's almost like a, how would you say, it's like a cantilever sort of thing. If only I had been an engineer. So let's see. Append severe. Initialize Q cube. Basically something that's like this. I don't know, something like that. I have to really think this through. Probably do a few little sketches, refine it a bit, refine it a lot. And then we'll come up with something that's simplified. Basically, that's going to be his little legs, little cyber legs. And then the other things, we're going to need to make his hands. Those might be cybernetic as well. And then we need to make him a little coat, the hoodie, and all that other stuff. And then we'll eventually start, can't even talk. Eventually start working on a pose. Then figure out what scale he's going to be. Now, for my friend, I'm probably going to print this out as a mini and as like a larger piece, so that he can like put it on his desk at the store or whatever. Okay. And I think that's where we're going to leave off tonight. Hopefully, I don't know, probably another few good sessions, and we'll probably be more in the ballpark of where we want to be. So this is session 2. We got this far. We're only working on it for what, not even 2 hours at a time. So we're 3 hours into this. Probably could have been a little bit further, but not too bad. Not too bad for a little fun. All right. Well, I do thank everyone for hanging out, checking this out. Feel free to comment, ask questions. I'll try to answer them as I can. Hopefully, something in here is useful for you, if not for anything other than something to do. All right. Stay safe out there. I know the world's crazy out there, but it doesn't mean that we can't try and enjoy the life that we've been given. So I highly recommend that you do that. Don't let all this crazy stuff that's happening out there dissuade you. Live. Love each other. Rinse and repeat. That's all that matters at the end of the day anyway. Alright, folks. See you next week.